Mercifully, the first half of the Minnesota Wild season has come to an end. 21, 23, and 5. The All-Star break is upon us, so we'll recap the first half and talk about what the Wild should do for the rest of the season, all in today's episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Brandon Duham, and this is Locked on Wild.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes, and so that you can join in on the Locked on Wild YouTube comment section. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we recap a pretty sloppy first half of the season for the Minnesota Wild. I could not decide which word to use there. We'll talk about all the things that went wrong, some bright spots in the first half, and what the Wild should do as the season unfolds. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your best bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, credentialed media member, and joined here on a Monday edition of the show by Alex Micheletti. Of course, Alex, no victory Micheletti Monday today because the Wilds found a way to make this first half of the season even more embarrassing somehow by losing to an Anaheim Ducks team that, I don't know, they're not really in a position where they're even trying to win games at this point. The Wild are, but I think, as we said in the postcast, effective Saturday night, the playoff chase for this Minnesota Wild team is officially dead. It's over. It's done. We're not going to be trying to go out of our way to push for a postseason spot this year. And honestly, that's pretty indicative of a first half of the season in which it didn't seem like really anybody on the team felt any sense of urgency. Michael Russo hammered that point home in recapping Saturday's game. No sense of urgency. And I think the most fitting visual of the first half of the season was the fact that the XL Energy Center was so quiet in the third period against the Ducks that you could hear a pin drop. A very bad first half of the season for the Wilds. I mean, you can point to pretty much anything you want to that went wrong. And I was actually very, very relieved that we get a little bit of a break to not have to see things play out that just continue to play out this season.
Yeah, you've witnessed it live. Some of these home losses have just been egregious. It's one thing to lose on the road, but to lose in front of your home fans, and especially on Hockey Day, Minnesota, when it was such a great day, you had Rosso right before, and that was just awesome. Just the elements outside and the fog and the lights. That was an exciting game. And then you get Anaheim and Minnesota Wild, and it was just disastrous. You knew when the goal got called, when Boldy's goal got called back, that was just, you knew bad vibes were coming out of that, and just from there, they just, after that, they didn't do much.
Yeah, it was 100% pack it up and go home after the Boldy goal, and that, I think, is a perfect encapsulation of what is wrong with this team. What has been wrong with this team this season is there just is no ability to handle any level of adversity by this team. Like if you have a couple of penalties that are so that are called on the team, they fold. If you get a goal taken off the board, They fold if they fall behind early on in a game. They fold if they score a goal and somebody responds in kind, as teams do. They fold. And so, like, we just have been handed a million different reasons as to why this is going to be a season that ends after 82 games. And it's like the only people that don't seem to get the hint are the players on ice and the people running the team. Like, this does not show any indications of a team that, like, I'm going to use Edmonton as an example again. They've won 16 games in a row. You can get hot, you can go on a run, but every time it seems like this Wild team is going to, they suffer just a gross loss, and they go right back to where they were. And so there's no, like, building momentum. It's short little bursts and then going right back to where you were. And that's how we've spent 49 games and have essentially just gone right back to where things were when Dean was fired.
Yeah, you see the soft parts of the schedule, and they kind of, we talk about this off air, but they just they play with your mind. Like they're like, hey, we're gonna go on a run, and then just disaster sets in, more injuries, or just turning over the pucks left and right. And the one difference about this year's team too is at times, I mean, the goaltending's been absolutely horrendous. I mean,
Yeah.
horrendous. Maybe it's Gus, going back to his Ottawa days, and it was a 1-year wonder. You have to think that. And then with Fleury, it's just it's a roller coaster with Fleury too. And with his age, you can't ride him a whole lot. So you go back to Gus, and maybe Gus isn't 100%, or they rushed him, but you don't want to throw Jesper into this mess again. After what they did to him by having him play in Dallas, that was just the worst decision possible ever. So it's this team, we could in one word say inconsistent is the name of the game for the 2023-2024 season.
Yeah, and there have been some bright spots, as we'll talk about later in today's show, but which has surprised you the most that we have seen this season? And I'm just going to roll through some numbers here to kind of give you the scope as to where this team is at. From a points perspective, the Minnesota Wild currently sit 27th in the NHL with 47 points. So they're 27th out of 32 teams in points this year. In terms of goals for, the Minnesota Wild are 18th with 146. They're tied with Nashville and Buffalo with 146 goals. Now, goals against, the Minnesota Wilds are 25th overall with 164 goals against. And so bottom third in points, bottom third in goals against. Power play percentage, the Minnesota Wild are 17th at 20.7. Penalty kill, the Minnesota Wilds are third worst. They are why did that number go back? Third worst in the NHL, or actually second worst, 31st overall, 75.3% on the penalty kill. The numbers are so bad that it's frying my brain. Special teams, meltdowns, injuries, hideous defense and goaltending, or just players just going through these very weird slumps or inconsistent scoring streaks. Which one has surprised you the most through this first half?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the goals against and the goaltending and this defense, because as we know, historically, this team has relied on their decor to, to have them go on long stretches of good play and just way too inconsistent. And when you have a third pairing sometimes of Goligoski and Merrill, it's the worst third pairing in the league. There's sometimes with pairings you can rely on one person to to,
cover.
to cover, but
Yeah.
they're both anchors when they're out there together.
Ugh.
It's just it's hideous, and it just it drags down the rest of the team. You have when the goalies see that those guys out there, they're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to, sometimes they're overthinking it, or they're gonna have to try to do way too much. And then the forwards too, they're like, oh man, we can't pass it back to these guys, or they're just gonna fumble it. And I mean, even poor Dakota Mermis we've seen recently too, where it has had some nightmare plays too. It's just the D options right now, it's absolutely awful.
It's abysmal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were a couple of plays on Saturday's game. There was one in particular in which Johnny Vibes got,
Yeah.
I think the right way to phrase it is escorted off the puck, because it's not like he got moved off the puck.
No.
It's like when you have a friend who's had one too many at the bar.
Yeah.
Like, they just continue to move. You
Yeah.
basically just have to kind of guide them in a direction, and they'll just go. And like,
well, one guy too that reading the Russo's recap, the fact that Jake Middleton, he had a tough game and he just would not comment like that. That's a tough look, especially for a guy that is normally pretty vocal. When you have a rough game, you should own up to that, and just to have no comment. That's the way this season is going. To just own your mistakes, and and just try to at least say you'll be better next game. Especially, I mean, that effort on Hockey Day Minnesota against a team that's, like you said, is in the lottery running, trying to get Macklin Celebrini. They aren't trying to win games. They didn't even have your one of your favorite guys in the league, Trevor Zegras.
yeah,
This is a team that is just trying to acquire young assets, and eventually, when Cutter Gauthier is there, that they'll have a young nucleus to make a run. But that Dostal kid, that's a guy that's beatable too. And the fact that they could only get a couple goals and not put away this Ducks team, they've let teams hang in there, which you can't do, because games are so close. I mean, we saw yesterday the Kings and the Blues. The Blues took another team to overtime and they won. That's these dreaded 3-point games in the West. It's just, if the Wild are trying to stay in it, all these teams in front of them are making games go to, into 3-point games, and that just kills the Wild.
Yeah. And so I think we're in consensus here that the best part of the first half of the season is that it's done.
Yeah. Everybody needs a break.
It's over. Everybody needs a break, including us.
Yes.
There were some bright spots, and so we'll
Yes.
talk about first half MVPs, and we're going to dive in, and we'll get into a meaty look at the things that this team needs to do the rest of the way this season with 33 games remaining. There are some things that they can do to push this thing in the right direction. And I'm not talking about postseason. There are some things that they can do to push this in the right direction. So we'll talk about that as well as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. We thank those that took the time to vote in the Sports Podcast Awards voting. Voting is officially closed. We'll know by Thursday who ends up taking home the prize. So be
Fingers
on
crossed.
the lookout there. We'll see who ends up getting the top hockey podcast for 2024. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. But continuing today's episode, Seth Topol and Alex Micheletti. Let's talk first half MVPs, Alex, because there are 3 players that are currently on pace to play in 82 games this year. I think literally every other player on the roster has been injured at one point or another.
The MASH unit.
And so who is your pick? Because I feel like the 3 finalists, Brock Faber, Marco Rossi, and Joel Eriksson, they have been in the lineup every day. They have vaulted high on the list in terms of importance for what this season continues to try to convince us that it is, even though it's pretty clear it's not. I think there's one clear-cut winner here, but who would you go for first half MVP?
Yeah, I love Eck. You know, if Faber wasn't playing the way that he is, Eck would be my choice. Just based on the position that he plays as a forward on the forward group, a center, because they have no other centers. But the way Faber is playing, it's just absolutely incredible. You talked about it the other night too, for a guy that has never played the power play before, at least not in college, coming in as a pro to not only play on the power play, but have to run the power play too. It's absolutely incredible. And the amount of minutes that they've had to put on him as a 21-year-old coming in as a first full-time season, it's just, it's absolutely insane. And he's been playing, top minutes, against some of the best forwards in the world, and is playing phenomenal. And he's at the point too where he'd be past in the amount of games that he would be in college. And right now he'd be a senior at the University of Minnesota. So it's just mind-boggling. And the amount of pressure on this guy coming in, it was insane, because Kevin Fiala was such a fan favorite, and the fact that they had to give up him was the criticism that Wild fans gave Bill Guerin. It was insane. And he's not only has he put himself in the Calder race, but I mean, he's made people forget that they had to give up Kevin Fiala. So, and just he's had to deal with so many people on the back end there getting hurt too. And, to not have Jonas Brodin at times, and then Jared Spurgeon, and he's playing better than vets, some guys that have, won the Stanley Cup and been in the league for a decade plus. It's insane. And thank goodness that he's on this team.
Yeah, no kidding, because I don't know where they would be if not for him being able to keep, like, various parts of the ship have been leaking at various times of the season. And I'm not talking just little leaks. Like, there's a lot of water being taken on by this boat. And Faber has come in and has stabilized quite a few different spots. And you look through the first 49 games of the season, he is fourth in the entirety of the NHL in minutes so far this season. He has played in 49 games, 1,217 minutes, which is 8 more than Roman Josi, and is 19 fewer than Cam Fowler. Noah Dobson has not come off the ice for even a second for the New York Islanders this season. 1,272 minutes in 49
Look at those names
games.
that you're talking that you're putting him in with. I mean, Roman Josi, that the other night against the Wild, that it's it's guys like that you watch. It's like they're iron lungs, and they just some guys when they play certain teams, they just own them. And Roman Josi's always done that against the Wild. But yeah, when you're putting Brock Faber up with those names, it's impressive. And he's only 21. He's got such a long career ahead of him. It's nuts how young these guys are. Same with Marco Rossi. We have to give him flowers too. I know we didn't pick him, but he was a finalist in this 3. But the way he's playing too. I mean, he's put himself up there in the Calder race too.
Yeah,
which is crazy. Poor Connor Bedard, having that fractured jaw. It's allowed some other guys to hop in there. But this, this rookie class is insane. Fantilli's playing really well on an awful Columbus team, and Leo Carlsson was at least at the beginning of the year was dealing with the Ducks load managing him, which is absolutely insane. And just there's so many good rookies. Logan Cooley at times has wowed, and these guys come in and they play with a lot of confidence, and they're like, we belong here. This next generation is something else.
I think Faber and Rossi will probably be finalists if things hold the way that they are. But you can tell that load management is not a strategy that a lot of teams subscribe to, by the fact that I just mentioned that rookie Brock Faber is 4th in the entirety of the NHL in minutes played. So sorry, Leo Carlsson, that you landed on the Ducks, because had you been a Minnesota Wilds player, you'd probably be 5th on the list.
No kidding.
In minutes played this season.
Playing 25 minutes as a forward.
Yeah, we've got to get him to 30. But yeah, it's Brock Faber pretty easy for me. I mean, number 1 power play defenseman, despite efforts when Spurgeon returned to put him on that unit, which that worked out for a whole 6 seconds.
Yeah.
Number 1 power play quarterback, number 1 penalty kill pairing, number 1 defensive pairing. He's playing in overtime. He's playing all of the critical spots all throughout the game. And if not for the brilliance of Brock Faber this year, we could be in number 1 overall pick territory. Right. Because you got to figure he's been worth at least a couple of wins so far this season. I shudder to think about where they would be at.
I mean, and looking at the draft, I know it's crazy to think about this early, but I mean, I saw Jerome McGinley's son is in the in the lottery. When I saw that mock draft, I was like, oh my God. when guys we grew up watching are having kids be in the NHL draft, it's like, dear God, we're getting old.
Yeah. And I was reminded of that again with Joe Mauer making the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Like I was texting a friend of mine, and I was like, I watched Joe Mauer's entire career start to finish, and he's been retired not only for 5 years, but he's also now in the Hall of Fame. I was like,
it's just nuts.
Every time an Anaheim Ducks player got behind the Minnesota Wild defense for a breakaway or a 2-on-1, I aged 5 years.
Well, and how about Jackson Lacombe, a defenseman, getting multiple breakaways. A Ducks defenseman. He's not even a forward. Yeah, it was just like, oh my goodness. And I thought, Adam Henrique when he got that breakaway chance coming out of the box, I was like, this is going in. But thank goodness. He's on one of those types of heaters. It was like, oh my God, here it comes. But
it didn't go in, but Troy Terry's did.
Oh my God. And I almost called that hat trick. Yeah, we were joking offline. I was like, when we saw John Merrill was in the lineup, I was like, incoming Troy Terry Hattie, and he was close. I mean, they were trying to get him out there with the empty net. It didn't go. But just this team, man.
This team, and that's for those that listen to the Locked On Wild postcast after that hockey day dud by the Minnesota Wild. We put a nail in the coffin for the playoff push, and so to finish today's episode, we'll talk about some of the things that the Wild should do down the stretch. You've got 33 games left, and so there are some ways that they can make positive steps if they simply would listen. We'll talk about that to finish today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is also brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. You may have heard some of those outrageous Super Bowl parlays or the 90 pages of Super Bowl prop bets. My favorite to keep track of is, of course, the length of the national anthem. But you've got some great options for the Super Bowl, whether it be the first quarter over or under, who scores the first touchdown of the game, even what color the Gatorade bath is for the winning coach. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. Plus, even better yet, new customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder, if you are interested in being part of a future episode of Locked On Wild, send an email to lockedonwild@gmail.com. We will get those lined up here. We've got a first batch of listeners that are excited to take part that will be going on this week. So if you are still interested in being part of that, lockedonwild@gmail.com. Alex, playoff push is over. It's dead. It's done. It's not happening. So there are some things that the Wild can do to navigate through the rest of this season. And number one, I think, is to get some fresh bodies up to the NHL level. We saw it. So this was another maddening thing that happened in Saturday's game. So Pat Maroon gets hurt. More on him in a bit. Pat Maroon gets hurt. Freddie Gaudreau was hurt for a little bit of the game as well. So you're down 2 players.
Right.
Marcus Foligno was sick before the game, so he didn't play. So you went 11-7. So you lose Maroon. You're down to 10 forwards. Then Freddie Gaudreau is out. So the Wild basically rolled 3 lines of forwards. Jake Lucchini, in a game in which you lost a forward and you had one that was not part of the game to begin with,
Heinzer just refused to play him.
Yeah, played a grand total of 4 minutes. He didn't take a single shift in the second period.
Why even have him up? Why, if that, why even have him up on the team then?
Yeah, and this is the thing, is whether it's Jake Lucchini or whether it's Adam Raska, you're not you're playing those guys 5 minutes a night. Yeah. And this is something that has driven me absolutely haywire over the course of the season too, is because we see this with that third pairing defensively too. The numbers for those guys, it was under 10 minutes each for Merrill, Goligoski, and Mermis. And so again, I keep asking the question, what are you afraid of Daemon Hunt giving you in the couple of games that he's played where he's played 15 minutes? What are you afraid of him giving you that you are not getting from guys that you are protecting with small minute totals on that third pairing? You're not extending.
It can't be worse. Yeah.
It just can't. I just refuse to believe that it can be, because if they were good, you'd be playing them more. But instead, you're playing him 7 minutes a night, 8 minutes a night.
You drafted Daemon Hunt where he was, and if you aren't going to let him develop, I mean, what are we doing here? And Alex Goligoski and John Merrill clearly aren't the future on the back end. So give Daemon Hunt a chance, and if he fails, then he fails, and you have plenty of other D prospects in waiting too. You got Carson Lambos, Ryan O'Rourke, Jack Pert is probably going to sign here after St. Cloud's season is done. So I mean, you have guys in the hopper that are ready to try to make that next step too. And a guy like Will Butcher, who they just traded for, former Horby Baker Award winner, he's an option too that they might have to call up here too. It just it's a nightmare on the back end.
Yeah, and I think one of the potential spots that has led to Daemon Hunt not seeing a ton of time is trying to prevent him from that elusive number on his entry-level contract. They don't want to burn. But guess what? You already have.
Right.
He's played in 12 games so far this season. So
play the man. Play him.
Yeah, if the cutoff is 10, right, you've already gone above that. So get him in the lineup yesterday. He should be. So if you're going to, because here's the other thing. Jared Spurgeon's on long-term injured reserve for the rest of the season. He's out for the year. So you're not having to bare bones the roster. So Daemon Hunt, the first day that you come back after the All-Star break, number one. But then let's do a little better than having a fourth line guy that you play for 4 minutes in a game. What is that? Is that five or six shifts is all?
If that. Yeah, it does that guy no harm. It's more embarrassing for him that he has to sit there for an entire 60 minutes. I think that's worse than being in the press box, because you're just sitting there while the rest of your teammates are going on and off the ice, and you're the grocery stick. You're opening up the door. Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's not a good look for the organization. It's not good for the player, and it's just you have to imagine. Could you imagine what it is to be like Adam Beckman too? I mean, you see every other prospect get a chance, and you're still stuck in Iowa. It's got to be mind-boggling for him. And you think at some point he would just go to his agent and say, enough is enough.
Yeah. He should be player number 2 after the All-Star break. And beyond that, I mean, take your pick.
I mean, we've seen that this organization really doesn't trust Sammy Walker, even though people want him up here. It's just, I don't know if he is comfortable being a fourth line guy. Some guys they do it to adjust to to stay in the league. Yeah, you can look at a guy like Nick Dowd. I'm sure I know Seth, you're familiar with him, but at St. Cloud he was he's a big time scorer, and then for him to get into the National League and National Hockey League, and then stick in the National Hockey League, he learned to kill penalties, be on the fourth line, be a grinder. And if you want to be an NHLer, you do whatever it takes to to have them, to make them keep you up there. And he's found a great spot in Washington. And yeah, it's just there's plenty of examples of guys that they adapt to a role, even though they might have been a scorer in college, but you do whatever it takes to to stay in the league.
Yeah, that you find a role and you put yourself in position to where a team can't take you out of the lineup. That's as easy as it is. So let's get some new bodies up here. For the love of God, don't buy. There's no reason to buy.
No.
There's no reason, unless, again, the only instance, because this is something that I continue to try to imprint, is there's going to be no Goligoski next year. You're probably not bringing Zach Bogosian back, although it wouldn't surprise me if that was attempted. And look, I wouldn't be super upset by that. I think he's had some games where it's like, oh boy, but I think we can attribute at least some of that to who he is on a pairing with.
He's only 33 too. People think just with his beard that he's like 40. He's 33, and it's crazy to think he was the third overall pick in his draft too, which is just mind-boggling to think he's he's made it a long time in this league, but he's still not that old.
Well, and call me crazy, but I loved all those stories that came out about how willing he was to be a mentor for Daemon Hunt, while Hunt was up here. I like that. You're going to be relying more and more on young players, and so if you have guys that are like, hell yeah,
they've won cups.
Yeah,
they know how to win.
I would be fully in favor of bringing a guy like that back. But okay, so no Goligoski.
Right.
I don't think there is, and I'm choosing my words carefully here because this is probably going to be like a Mount Vesuvius level eruption next year if it happens. I don't see there being a conceivable way that you can have John Merrill back next year.
People are triggered by the word buyout, but it might they might have to do it just to get him off the books, or he'll be on the books, but away from this team. It's you might have to pull the trigger on it.
I just don't see a way that he's back. So that's 2 spots right there.
Right.
And so Daemon Hunt still theoretically, even if you bring Bogosian back, could still theoretically be a starter for this team. And again, something that we need to just work into our thought process. I'm not comfortable just penciling Jared Spurgeon into a spot and saying, he's gonna have no problems. He's gonna be just fine. Pencil him in for 82 games as a top pairing defenseman. I'm not comfortable making that assumption because he's having some
surgery,
pretty substantial surgeries that he's going through this offseason. And so I'm not comfortable just saying, we can rely on Spurgeon the way that we have over the last few years. And so there are going to need to be some defensemen that can actually help you just get through the season. But beyond that, for the love of God, do not buy at the deadline.
No, it does not help anybody. Yeah.
So sell. But here's the problem with that. You have a limited, unless you get guys to agree to waive, you have some, you've got some maneuvering that needs to happen in that regard. And again, it's great to mention that, you can theoretically move some of these guys with the no move or the no trade protections. But here's the other part of that equation too. Bill Guerin would have to either A, get to the point where he wanted to, which is an admission of this mix not working, or B, have Craig Leopold tell him he has to make some sort of a big change to move one or two of these guys. Beyond that, it's probably not happening. So
yeah, it's just yeah. And the tradable assets, look at Pat Maroon got hurt. So
one of them is hurt right now.
Yeah, so it just that would be another conundrum too, is the tradable assets get hurt.
Yeah, we're in a great spot. So basically down the stretch here, let's give some extended and honest opportunities to some of the guys down in Iowa to see, because there are going to be players that get hurt again. It's happened all season. So let's give some honest opportunities to those guys. Give them the opportunity to see what you've got. Daemon Hunt should be in the lineup regularly in these final 33 games. Don't buy. Please don't buy.
And even if they buy, I mean, where are some of these guys going to play too? If they try to buy, I mean, again,
you're going to have to move somebody off the roster,
right? I mean,
and again, I don't think Bill Guerin has shown even an inkling of wanting to do that. And
I know a couple of these guys have been just fan favorites for a bit, but I don't see Connor Dewar and Brandon Duhaime being on the team next season, because I think those guys are sick of being on the fourth line. You can tell when Dewar scored that in that other night, he's like, it had been a while, it just but it seems like, that those guys are hunting for more minutes somewhere else. And, I could see a Brandon Duhaime going back to Florida, and, being on a, Tampa Bay team that's in transition, or a Florida Panthers team too, where he could get more ice time and be comfortable at home. And, a guy like, you hate to hear this, but like a Connor Dewar could go back to Manitoba and go play for the Winnipeg Jets, or a team like that in Canada, which would be just haunting. But just those guys. It seems like they want more minutes elsewhere, and some other teams might be able to provide that other than the Wild. I know it's tough to hear, but yeah.
No, you're right though.
It just seems like it.
Yeah, you are right. So those are some things that we should see happen.
Yep.
We all know what's going to happen though, and so it's these final 33 games. It's going to be me yelling into the microphone, wondering why we continue to push for something that's not attainable, why we bought a third pairing defenseman for some level of prospects. And so fear not, because Locked On Wild will try to be the voice of reason here down the stretch. But again, you're dealing with what we want to see based off of a different set of circumstances from the front office. So it's going to look different than what we are hoping to see, but I guess we'll take small positives that benefit the greater good if we can, if we get them. And it probably won't take long, because if they're going to be in a position to buy at the deadline, you got to start playing like it. And there just has been no instance this year in which this team has. And so you'll lose to Chicago to start off the second half, and that at some point, one of those types of games is going to be the one where the fork, like
the actual dagger, where it's the Kraken are gonna lend a oh man,
please let them just walk the plank.
Yeah.
So enjoy. I stress this to everybody listening. Enjoy a week of quiet, because I think for all of our sanities, we could use one. So enjoy the All-Star break. Episodes, we're not going anywhere. So there'll be plenty of episodes here throughout the week. We're going to take a look at a few things. I want to dive into a potential for Brock Faber's new contract. So that'll be a full episode.
Get that 8-year extension loaded up.
Just line that 8x8 up right now. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a few other things. Probably do some draft stuff too, because we're in the top 10 now in Tankathon. We're back. So we'll talk about that as well. So a lot coming up here this week. Thank you for the support as always.
Thank you, everybody.
And we appreciate you taking some time out of your day with us here at Locked On Wild and making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure to hit the like button before you head out for the rest of your daily routine. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as well, so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week, which you can find every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.